Welcome to the Dr. Bergson's Best Health Radio Show. Boy, keeping ourselves best health in body, mind, and spirit with everything going on in the world, in the United States, it's not easy. We're gifted this body, mind, and spirit. We got to caretake it. And how do you know when you don't know who to listen to and what to do? So I've been having my own little therapy. I bought a rowing machine on Amazon, came in about 85 pieces, had to have a retired engineer friend with a mask put it together on my porch and then drag it on cardboard into my living room. Because as many of you know, I was suffering with plantar fasciitis, which is almost gone due to my extracorporeal shockwave treatments that I've been getting. I have to go test it out by walking or being outside and really using it, but I'm a little fearful. But I'm pain-free now for a while, and boy, is that a different planet to occupy. One planet with a lot of chronic severe pain every time you take a step, and another planet with no pain. Two different planets. That's what I really love with many of my patients, is to get them on the second planet that's much better. So I bought the rowing machine because you didn't have to be weight-bearing. And I've been watching a lot of comedies and some of my old favorite movies. One of my favorite movies that I can watch over and over again, spaced out over time, is Moonstruck. And I was listening to one of my favorite scenes. We're going to be talking about melatonin and viruses in just a little bit, but I wanted to get to one of my favorite scenes because it seemed to me that it applied so much to what we are living in at this moment. So Ronnie Camilleri is talking to Cher. Love Cher in that movie. Love Cher in that movie. And this is what he says. And as I was rowing and listening to what he said, I had to stop and write the whole speech down. And I've said it to myself over and over again. I'm going to share it with you because it just spoke to my heart about living in the COVID madness at this moment. So he was supposed to be marrying her brother, and her brother said, they've been estranged. Would you go? Because her brother was the man she's going to marry is in Italy. He said, would you go talk to my brother? We've been estranged. And she goes to talk to his brother, and she ends up having some vodka with him in his kitchen, making him some food. And lo and behold, she falls in love with the brother rather than the guy she's supposed to marry. So he looks at her, Ronnie Camilleri, and he says, everything seems like nothing to me now. The past and future is a joke to me now. I see that they're nothing. I see they ain't here. The only thing that's here is you and me, Loretta. That's who Cher is. I love you. Not like what they told you love is. And I didn't know this either. But love don't make things nice. It ruins everything. I kind of think of this with life. It breaks your heart. It makes us a mess. We ain't here to make things perfect. Snowflakes are perfect. The stars are perfect. Not us, not us. We're here to ruin ourselves and to break our hearts and to love the wrong people and to die. The storybooks are bullshit. Well, we're learning now over the last few months, the history books are bullshit. Thomas Jefferson had 6 kids and a slave that he kept, and writing books on Saxonism. Yes, we don't learn things in school necessarily that are accurate, but he says, Ronnie Camilleri says, the storybooks are bullshit. Now, will you come upstairs with me and come into my bed? And I think with all the TV and all the media and all the classes that tell you in 3 days you'll learn the 7 answers to becoming totally sane, perfect, thin, organized, we're under the illusion that life should be something that we can take into a small Chinese take-home carton, and it's containable and it's doable. And when things go crazy, it's the wrong. But life is a marble cake of the crazy, the wrong, and the good. When I graduated school, I remembered one of the most profound lectures I ever heard was he said, you'll always try throughout your life to get on top of your life, to get everything organized, but life is dynamic and you can't really get on top of it. So we're all stressed out because this is that new normal. But life is abnormal. It's a roller coaster. It's up and down. It's in and out. We're born and then we die. So at the moment, we've got to dig deep and find the way we can deliciously live our life at this moment, no matter what is showing up. Because only the snowflakes are perfect. The stars are perfect, but not us. We're here to ruin ourselves. Of course, I mean, we don't want to die. We want as many people to avoid getting COVID as possible, but life ultimately is a mortal trip. And we are here to ruin ourselves, to break our hearts, to love the wrong people. And when you look at this bigger picture, kind of a Rumi-esque poetry kind of look, life has times when it's absolutely out of control. That's part of life. It's not like it's wrong. It's part of life. And life has times when it's absolutely a mess and the wrong people are doing the wrong jobs and saying the wrong things and everyone is screaming at each other. That's a moment in real life too. So when I say and remind myself about this, that I'm not so holding my breath and maintaining this high level of stress that's so hard for me to try and nullify. Life is this big mess, and at the moment, we're in one of the messier parts of it, and we will get through this. It won't always be like this, and will be something different on the other side, which is great because hopefully we're learning from each new thing that comes up from life, just like kids do in school and kids do in life. But I love Moonstruck, and I think I've watched Seinfeld now in New York live about 4 times, and I keep laughing at all the jokes. So if you can find something that makes you breathe really hard, get your cardiovascular system going, you don't want to be sitting too much, and then also brings in all these other aspects and some comedy, I think that that's really a great way to go. So I wanted to share that with you I think that's a big part of health, learning how to embrace the isness. Right now, the isness is chaos and stress and strife and not a singular voice and having a hard time knowing where terra firma or ground is. That's just what is right now. So take a deep breath, and we're going to talk maybe about another tool that you can use to give yourself some sense that you're a little bit safer. You know, knowing you've got some tools in your tool bag. For example, I'm not going to be talking about hydroxychloroquine. Boy, it's been up and down in the news, and Trump was saying that he took some prophylactically and people were kind of making fun of him. That's the one thing I didn't think that was accurate to do if he wants to do that. And I had written a big blog on COVID in April, which got translated into Spanish and French, and I got some feedback from some hospitals in those countries, and it was also made the June issue of the Townsend Medical Letter. And in there, I was reporting on the Marseille study in France, where they were using hydroxychloroquine to treat patients, and they tried it in several different groups, one with just hydroxychloroquine, one with hydroxychloroquine and an antibiotic, Zithromax, and another one with an antibiotic and zinc. And they could really see that it reduced the viral load, but it was all about timing. If they gave it to people in the ICU, it didn't seem to be efficacious, which is what a lot of our American studies are showing us. But if it was given very early on in the disease, it seemed to be very efficacious. So timing is everything. The difference between a traitor and a hero, and maybe sometimes when a drug is efficacious. We have a few patients in Naples that started to have very severe COVID symptoms, tested positive, and the docs there gave them some hydroxychloroquine, which is a typical rheumatoid arthritis medication, also known as Plaquenil, and it stopped their symptoms right off the bat. And there's a new article that came out, I think it's in the New England Journal of Medicine, where it looked at taking hydroxychloroquine within 4 days of being exposed to COVID, prophylactically, within 4 days of exposure, and that it appeared to reduce viral load. And they need bigger studies. We don't have them because this is all unfolding in real time. But anyway, when you know that you have something on hand that could be helpful for you, you have a bit more peace. You got your funny movies, you got your rowing machine in the living room, but you also got a tool bag that gives you more peace. For example, there's a medical doctor here in Texas, Dr. Bartlett, who's talking about a silver bullet to treat people once they're really having trouble breathing, which is nebulized steroid. And he uses a very specific one. And then I kind of sleuthed the literature, and lo and behold, some researchers in England had taken out and registered for clinical trials nebulized steroids in May 15th. Back then. And I had interviewed on this show some physicians that had come together as a group, and one of their bullets was nebulizing steroids so that you could block the vasculotropic nature of this disease. You could stop the clots and the damage to the lungs. So when people now are knowing more how COVID a bit unfolds, they can use medications that are more honed. So now in my home pharmacy, I've got some hydroxychloroquine in case I feel I've been exposed, and I've got a little bit of nebulized steroid. And I've been taking melatonin, which we're talking about soon, I promise. And if you feel like you have some tools, so if you are affected in the early stages, you have some big guns to deal with it, gives you more peace so that you can row on that rowing machine and watch those comedies. So melatonin actually has some peer review articles coming out on it, and it's been looked at its role as an antiviral substance for a while, but we have an article that just came out called Melatonin Roles in Influenza, COVID-19, and Other Viral Infections. And there's a growing, and this came out just recently, there's a growing appreciation that the regulation of the melatonergic pathways, so your pineal gland makes melatonin, but lots of other tissues in your body are little manufacturing plants for melatonin. Why? Because melatonin is a very versatile hormone that's one of the cleanest antioxidants we have, one of the cleanest immune modulating hormones that we have. It's not even really just a hormone. It actually is so multifaceted that, like we call vitamin D not just a vitamin, it's a prohormone. You could call melatonin not just a hormone, but a multi-hormone. So when we're looking at the grouping of melatonergic pathways, meaning its production in the pineal gland and in diverse tissues around the body, it looks like it's important in possibly as a tool against viruses. And when they reviewed the melatonergic pathway and its role in viral infections, emphasizing influenza and COVID infections, what they found is that melatonin can help tamp down the initial cytokine storm, as well as positively regulate immune cell response to virus infection, even in COVID. I wrote about that in April because there was so much data back then, but now these articles are coming out taking a look at it. So melatonin is known as the sleep hormone because it tends to induce the circadian gene called the BMAL1 gene, which disinhibits a number of enzymes that allow the body to calm down at night. And it resets our experience as being a human being of living on a planet with light and dark. But it looks like this resetting is not just with our sleep and awake cycles. It has a lot to do with circadian resetting of mitochondrial metabolism. So the deeper your melatonin and sleep experience is, the healthier your mitochondria, your energy-producing organelles are, and then this tends to run your immune system in a healthier way. So this is especially relevant that melatonin's caretaking of our energy system allows our immune system to have more access to energy to fight and protect us and to shift from unhealthy metabolisms to healthier metabolisms. So when a virus shows up, we can overcome it. So consequently, we are now learning that melatonin regulates mitochondrial melatonin. Some is even produced. So the pineal gland regulates your own little energy cells producing some melatonin and your immune cells making melatonin. And thus it's part of a healthy immune response. Now, viral infections and cytokine storm-driven changes. So that's the big problem is you have the first part of your immune system starts to fight a virus, and then the second part starts to fight a virus. This COVID has two stages. And the second stage, once it starts to replicate in your throat and then go down into the lungs, and probably people with the right genetic vulnerability. There's so much we don't know, but some people, there's a spectrum of response to being infected with COVID. You could get a nothing, or you could have a horrific death. And part of the really severe response is driven by what's called a cytokine storm. Inflammation out of control, and the immune system is put on overdrive. And the same time that this happens, you get severe gut permeability. You get leaky gut on roids. You get dysbiosis. And then your whole body is filled with nasty molecules like lipopolysaccharide, LPS, a circulating nasty molecule. And all of this can make the virus have a better chance to overwhelm you. And in each one of those levels, melatonin plays a protective role. And it looks like it is a potential immune regulator, a tool to use and have in your tool bag at home for the treatment of COVID-19 and other viral infections. Now that's coming out, that came out in Review of Medical Virology in May 2020. So that's in a peer-reviewed journal. And they were saying, we're looking at melatonin as a possible adjunctive treatment. This isn't the only treatment. We're looking at big guns because when you have something really severe like that, you want to throw as much as you can up against the wall to see what'll work. And we're talking now about early stage infection. But of course, if someone's in the ICU, they're using multiple interventions at that time. A lot of this is based on an article that came out in the Italian Journal of Pediatrics and also in the British Medical Comprehensive Journal. And that came out in 2013. It was quite an extraordinary article called Melatonin, Its Possible Role in the Management of Viral Infections. And so people have been looking at melatonin to be a tool with which to fight viruses for quite some time. That's 7 years ago. So melatonin is synthesized by the pineal gland, but also a whole other bunch of organs. It's made in the gut and the gastrointestinal lining. It's made in the retina in your eye. It's made in your bone marrow. It's even made by white blood cells, and it's made by melatonin. It wouldn't be made by so many different tissues in your body if it wasn't really important. It had multifaceted protective caretaking qualities. So besides playing an important role in sleep and circadian rhythm, which is what it's well known for as its starring vitae first description, it's immune regulatory, free radical scavenger, and an antioxidant, and one of the cleanest antioxidants that we have. So let's just dive a little bit into it. Let's talk a little bit about dosage, and talk a little bit about the type you would want to take. So melatonin its full name is N-acetyl 5-methoxytryptamine. So melatonin is its nickname. And it's the major neurohormone secreted by the pineal gland. And it is involved in the day and light. And as it does that, it protects your other hormones. So we have learned in the literature over many years that people who have night shifts and work at night and sleep during the day tend to have a higher risk of cancers, because one of the things that melatonin does is it caretakes your other hormones. It protects them from being under oxidative damage, especially estrogen, and people who don't tend to secrete as much melatonin tend to be more at risk of hormonally driven cancers. Now, I was a scholar at an environmental estrogen think tank at Tulane University and med school, and there was a medical doctor and researcher, MD, PhD, David Rask, who made his whole life the research of melatonin. And he discovered that melatonin blocks food going into tumor cells so they can't grow. So in other words, we hear that cancer loves sugar. Well, melatonin blocks the flow of sugars into tumor cells so that there's less growth possible. In essence, melatonin can starve tumors off. Melatonin protects hormones so tumors don't even initiate. In fact, there's about 7 different portals by which melatonin protects against breast cancer and intervenes even once you have breast cancer. So years ago when I heard him speak and I was going through breast cancer myself, I started to use high-dose melatonin, which I came up with the idea of using 20 milligrams at night because of all these protective things that it does. I didn't know then about all of its immune regulatory functions, but it's a perfect fit. And now some doctors like Dr. Schallenberger are even talking about giving higher doses in some patients who are really fighting for their life, up to 60 milligrams 3 times a day. When I had Dr. Galland on my show, he talked about giving up to 40 milligrams in his cancer patients because melatonin improves your immune response, helps fight cancer, and it tends to keep your mitochondrial energy at a higher level and make it available to your immune system to fight whatever you need to fight. So we're learning all kinds of things like that, and we can apply it into science. It's a natural aromatase inhibitor. There's lots of articles showing that it helps block testosterone going to estrogen, kind of like the pharmaceutical Arimidex, and so much so, and it protects against cancer in so many other multiple layers that for a number of years, pharmaceutical companies have been trying to add melatonin into pharmaceutical aromatase inhibitor meds so that they can get a bigger bang and protective bang for their buck for their patients. So melatonin has been being looked at in all these different ways of immune system and even against viruses, but it is an upregulator of the antioxidant pathway, like you think of vitamin C, and it scavenges nasty free radicals that want to bind to different molecules and damage you. So it is an immune modulator. So let's talk about its job description. If it was looking for a job and it was writing its vitae, it would say, well, the first thing I do is I regulate circadian rhythms. So the more melatonin you have at night, the deeper your restorative sleep and the healthier your energy, your mitochondrial metabolism we now understand the next day. It actually even protects mitochondrial function potential at the membrane. It's like a total mitochondrial caretaker. That's what it does. When you regulate, you have good sleep, you have better energy. It influences how long we have energy throughout the day. So melatonin influences the length of the energy allotment for us. When do you finally crash? That has a lot to do with how much melatonin you make at night. Melatonin has to do with sleep initiation. And so when we give melatonin to patients at night to help them sleep, we usually want, if they have sleep problems, we usually want to give a rapid-acting melatonin mixed together with a sustained-release melatonin so it could initiate sleep, and then over the next few hours, you still have melatonin being released in your body so it can maintain sleep. It has a lot to do with antioxidant action, anti-inflammatory action, regulating mitochondria, our energy organelles that are everything. Energy is everything. Just like we said, there's one planet with pain that you can occupy, and then another planet when you don't have pain, 2 different existences. It's the same thing with energy. If you have a lot of energy, it's like the world is your oyster. You can do anything. You don't have to worry about anything. You have tons of the most important revenue that there is. You have energy. And if you have no energy, you are exhausted. And a lot of people are exhausted. Your life is a totally different planet that you occupy. Well, melatonin has a lot to do with regulating mitochondria, which create energy. And that's why when you have a better night's sleep, you feel like you're better the next day. But at the top of the heap, melatonin is this amazing immune modulator. Now, once formed in the brain, in the pineal gland, it's released into your cerebral spinal fluid and then into the blood, where it doesn't live very long, and then it's metabolized by the kidneys and the liver. And as it travels all throughout your body in the bloodstream, so it's made in the brain, and then it goes into your cerebral spinal fluid, and then it goes into your blood. It exerts all these really cool effects. So as it passes through the kidneys, it's got some antioxidant and free radical scavenging. And as it passes through your gut, it has some immune system modulation. It goes throughout your body doing all of its job descriptions and keeping you as well as it can. Besides being produced in the pineal gland, remember it's produced all over your body. So besides the melatonin that's made in your brain that goes to your cerebral spinal fluid that goes all around, there's local peripheral production. Your gut makes some, your eyes make some, your white blood cells make some, and your bone marrow makes some. Now, oftentimes when somebody has cancer, we remove the tumor and we think the doctor says, we got it all. But you can have cancer stem cells that create recurrence that are lurking in your bone marrow. I think one of the reasons that we have melatonin in our bone marrow is to help tamp down cancer stem cell production there so that we have better health. So I think that melatonin works on a wide variety of levels to help protect ourselves. And it's produced by these non-endocrine, non-pineal organs, and it's not anything regulated by light and dark or circadian rhythm. And it affects your T cells, your natural killer cells, your eosinophil cells, your mast cells. All of them have melatonin receptors. So there's the light and dark personality of melatonin, and then there's a whole nother world of personality of melatonin that has nothing to do with light and dark and everything to do with controlling inflammation and immunity throughout your entire body. It's a very, very powerful antioxidant. And most antioxidants, when they go through the steps of taking a pro-oxidant molecule and reducing it to a less damaging free radical, they create some dirt in the midst of cleaning up the house. And melatonin is one of the cleanest antioxidants there are in that it doesn't create a lot of spin-off of other nasty molecules in the process of scavenging free radical molecules. And the activity and expression of antioxidant enzymes, famous ones that we all kind of know if you're in the health space: superoxide dismutase, glutathione catalase, glutathione peroxidase, glutathione reductase. They've all been shown to be increased by melatonin. So you hear of glutathione reductase, for example, or just glutathione. Everyone says, oh, it's an incredible molecule, and you certainly want to get it liposomal, or you want to eat asparagus because it's the highest food in glutathione. Well, melatonin helps boost the production of all of these protective molecules and make them work even better. It is a bomb. It is a hormonal bomb. It really helps keep the body safer on multiple levels, from the energy to allow it to do itself to protective molecules that we've known to come and we've known long and we've come to love them, like glutathione. Who knew that melatonin boosted the production of glutathione and the activity of glutathione? And it also, because it's released a lot into the cerebral spinal fluid, has a lot to do with the nervous system. And so melatonin is a calming agent along with oxytocin and estrogen receptor beta signals. So there's lots of hormonal signals that help keep your nervous system more zen. And melatonin does that, and not just through sleep. But it turns out that melatonin fights respiratory tract infections. Ding, 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 ding. How long can you sit on a rowing machine and keep watching your comedies? Let's get rid of this virus already. Part of the discussion should be, what can we do in our lives, and what can we have in our tool bags that could keep us from getting this infection, even if exposed, or if we're exposed, figuring out how not to be taken down by it. And melatonin is one of those things. So results confirming the antioxidant activity of melatonin were first done on studies where showed that it could fight respiratory types of infections. The most common one being bronchiolitis, a severe lower respiratory infection that infects nearly a lot of infants worldwide. And when they were able to use melatonin, they were able to shorten the length of the infection, or really make the infection almost like, some people got exposed to COVID and it's a nothing, to make it more like it was a nothing. And they started to take a look and see that melatonin protects lungs from acute oxidative injury, and it reduces the cytokine storm, which has become a term everyone knows, or the pro-inflammatory cytokines, and it reduces inflammatory cell recruitment, so other cells that would add to the fire are reduced, and the whole time it's this clean antioxidant. So that's pretty cool. So the modulation of the inflammatory response is improved on almost every level by melatonin. So let's talk about and it's in at pharmacologic adults, which concentrations, dosages, and melatonin is basically non-toxic. You don't want to take it if you don't need it. Especially young children are supposed to make enough of it. But we have such a toxic environment that our younger and younger children are making less and less of the hormones that we think of as being natural at a younger and younger age. Part of it is nutrition, because there's a lot of enzymes that are cofactors for hormone production and maintenance, that nutrition has a big role in it. And if not enough nutrients are around, or you have genetic glitches so that you can't make the nutrients, even if you eat the foods, let's say, you have a folate SNP and you eat plenty of leafy greens, but you can't make your folate out of it, then sometimes you need to be on nutrients. So there's a genetic component, and there's a food and digestive component. And all of this plays a role into the health of our hormones and even the health of our melatonin. So we probably wouldn't give melatonin to kids unless they started to look like they're getting ill. And then the dosages would be really small, like 1/3 of a milligram or 1/2 of a milligram, really, or even 1/2 of those. So 1/4 of a milligram. But when you're looking at giving melatonin to humans for pharmacologic results, then you can get much higher. Like we were talking earlier, in some cancer patients, some physicians are giving large dosages 3 times a day, up to 60 to 80 milligrams 3 times a day with someone fighting for their life, or 20 milligrams at night. There's this wide spectrum. But looking at it in terms of, if you're infected with COVID, if you want to protect yourself from COVID, I think you're looking at an amount that you can take that doesn't make you groggy or a little bit depressed, because it can give you such restorative sleep that you don't wake up so easily. Your circadian rhythm, rather than being supported, is a little bit dinged. So you don't want to take enough melatonin where takes you an hour or 2 to wake up, if that's not your normal schedule. So a lot of people say that's 3 milligrams or 5 milligrams. For me, because I've had breast cancer and I've had years where I've taken 20 milligrams at night, I find that 10 milligrams right now is a great level for me to have as a protection against COVID, where I used to take 5 on a regular basis after I'd stopped taking for a few years the higher dose as post-breast cancer care. Some people say that they're taking 20 to 30 milligrams and it makes them sleep better than they have for a really long time. I have an MIT scientist friend that read my article and started inching up on his melatonin and found that at 40 milligrams before he went to bed, he's sleeping better than he's ever slept in his life. So there's a lot of difference from one person to another. You're not going to want to stay on really high dosages. It's not meant to be on very, very supra pharmacologic dosages for a long period of time. But if you were to get COVID, then I think you would want to take a look at doing anything from 20 to 40 to even more milligrams. And if you were really ill with it, you might look at taking it throughout the day, but then you get a little bit of fatigue throughout the day because it is a sleep hormone. But then I've had a few patients, because it is a mitochondrial booster and caretaker hormone, I've had one or two patients where I said, be careful. They had severe cancer, they're fighting for their lives, so we recommended melatonin throughout the day. So be careful, you might get a little tired, just taper. And if you go to high dosage, you taper up to it and then taper down from it. You just don't throw that high dosage at you like 15 milligrams or 20 milligrams out of the chute. You start with 5, then you go up to 10, then you go up to 15. You go slowly to just give yourself a little time to acclimate. But the few patients that I have given melatonin throughout the day that I warned they might get fatigued because of that, 2 of them have said, I have more energy than I've had in a really, really long time, because their issue was that their mitochondrial melatonin was dysfunctional for some reason, and giving them melatonin throughout the day was really their answer for energy. So it's all individual. And in medicine, we try and find this algorithm because we're used to medications and they come in 10 milligrams and 20 milligrams and, that's it. But in the wild, in the real world, our individualness is to be honored more. We're not perfect like the stars. We're not perfect like the snowflakes. We're here to be ruined, meaning we're just part of being a human being is being a bit of a mess and definitely being individual. And you have to figure out which brooms you need to clean up your mess best and which ones work more effectively for you. So I hope this has been helpful. A melatonin merge with a moonstruck merge. But life is a marble cake. It isn't just one thing, it's everything. So I hope this gave a little peace in your heart and another tool in your tool bag. And I know this is really a crazy, crazy time. But crazy, crazy times are also part of life. So how are you living in this crazy time? And don't abandon yourself to just stress and worry and upset. This is just another time. It's a different time in your life, but it's a valid time. So you might as well occupy that bodysuit with a bit more peace. I recommend a rowing machine in front of some comedies or movies that you really like. Blessings, everybody. Within this crazy time, be as well as you can. Okay, bye-bye.